Hello and welcome. My name is Chris Cam with Mining Journal, and with me I have Rule Investment Media Chief Executive Rick Rule. Rick's recently signed an agreement with Aspermont across the Rule Symposium and the Aspermont Finance Series, the Mining Journal Select and Mining News Select events. Rick will be sharing his wisdom across those events with us, but we have a bit of a curtain raiser in the form of a virtual series of interviews with Rick that we're able to share with you. Rick, thanks for joining us.
Chris, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
In this interview, we're looking at global politics. It's a big subject. And of course, we're going to start with the US election. Could go one of two ways. In one of those directions, it looks like a more of the same approach if Biden is re-elected. And then on the other side, on the Trump side of the equation, well, who knows what will happen. One would expect it's a boost for markets. It's a stall for the energy transition. What are you looking at when you're considering how investments and yourself as an investor should be positioning for those different outcomes?
Well, as an American, I have to say I'm somewhere between depressed and horrified with the options that are in front of me. That'll probably anger a few of your subscribers, but so be it. I think the Biden administration has been a disgrace, and I think that a Trump administration would be no better and scary to boot. I don't think that any outcome will be particularly good for the U.S. economy, although I expect that U.S. equities markets would do well in the early days of a Trump administration. One could expect Trump to be pretty transactional. One could expect him to lean much more heavily on the Fed to be irresponsible and lower interest rates too quickly. The circumstance in front of us does not look particularly promising, either for Americans or citizens of the world. Make no mistake, we'll get through this. The United States is an amazingly vibrant society, and we tend to survive all of our worst mistakes, most of whom we seem to elect. I suspect that in either case, you will see a gradual deterioration of the hegemony around the US dollar. And I think that you'll see financial institutions in other parts of the world, whether they deserve to or not, beginning to challenge US ascendancy in those places, not really as a consequence necessarily of the strength of those outside institutions, but rather as a consequence of the self-imposed reduction of American standard. Not a particularly bullish outlook, I'm afraid, Chris, in either circumstance. I think that people who are fossil fuel investors, including coal, carbon investors, obviously would prefer a Trump administration. And I suspect that customers around the world who are interested in energy security and are interested in the ascent of their own living standards, particularly in very, very poor countries, would probably prefer Trump's energy policies to Biden's energy policies. But my suspicion is, on balance, neither of those outcomes, in other words, neither of those candidates would do a good job either for the American economy or American society, and by proxy, for the economy and societies of the rest of the world.
Okay, and what would you like to see? The obvious question there, Rick. You're not expecting great things from either if elected. What are the kind of basic things that you would be hoping for if you wanted to see stronger markets and a bit of stability and less volatility for investors?
I'd like to see America take the bitter pill. Our on-balance sheet liabilities exceed our GDP. That's really, truly scary. And our off-balance sheet liabilities, which is to say Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, are currently, according to the Congressional Budget Office, have a net present value exceeding $120 trillion. We need to address government spending radically. We need to address the national debt. We need a foreign policy that doesn't see us meddling in everybody else's business. We need a defense budget that is no longer larger than the defense budget of the rest of the world combined. We need to allow our citizens the freedom to get ahead and drive the American economy the way that they always have. We need substantially less government. We don't need a right-wing government. We don't need a left-wing government. We don't need a centrist government. We need a lot less government. although he's a bit of I don't know, a ham. The person who was recently elected as the president of Argentina seems like a much better choice to me than either of the clowns, or pardon me, we have three clowns in the United States, if you include Kennedy, currently vying for leadership of this strange, sad place.
You touch on Argentina, and it brings us nicely into the idea of places that exist outside the US. Obviously, the world's largest economy, exceptionally important and a leader. There are other elections going on across this year in a lot of Western democracies and other places, the UK being one. What are some of the things that, as an investor, you're looking for when you look at what could happen and what could shift markets in this current political landscape?
I think you need to draw a line between an investor who has interests that may or may not be of interest in the citizenry and vice versa. I can say, as a very general theme, I am hoping that we see a reversion to mean in terms of the global affection for political control and political solutions to what are basically private problems. Whether we're actually going to see that or not is a very, very different question. I've seen many reversions to means in my life. I've seen the United States swing from, Kennedy-esque progressivism to Reagan-esque conservatism to Obama-esque, liberalism. I've seen that sort of thing. So I think what you're going to begin to see is a swing to the right around the world. For me personally, somebody with libertarian leanings, somebody who is more interested in individual liberty and free trade, that's not necessarily a good thing. As an investor, a swing to the right probably is a good thing. And I think you're going to begin to see that. You're seeing throughout Europe, as an example, the beginnings of a revolt among common people, particularly farmers, to the overreach of Brussels. You're seeing popular disgust with the elected leaders and bureaucrats flying 1,200 private jets to Davos to tell you and I to drive less. That sort of thing is wearing fairly thin. And my belief is that there's a groundswell of citizen support around the world for limiting the real lunatics in government from imposing strange ways of living on us. And I suspect that we will see that around the world. And I suspect that that will be good for extractive industries. I think it'll be good for markets in general. I also think we're heading into a period, unfortunately, of more overt hostility. More people saying my way is the right way. And if you don't agree with me, I'm going to punish you until you do. So I think that you're seeing an Islamic ascendancy. I think that you're seeing a rightist Christian ascendancy. I think that you're seeing a progressive ascendancy. You're seeing a lot of people who are very self-righteous, not minding their own business, but rather minding everybody else's business, which is not such a good thing.
Rick, that's all we've got time for this interview, but we will look forward to catching up with you across the year in Sydney, Perth, Miami, and in London.
Chris, thank you. I look forward to seeing you at all those places.